Who should not buy an annuity? My name is Daniel. Last year we moved well over $1 million into annuities. Here's who shouldn't. First, very simply, is going to be if someone is too young. Now you'll notice that this point, the second, the third, and the fourth point that we're going to go over in this video really are all going to come down to one why, and that's what your goal is. We'll hit on this a little bit more later, but first, as a rule of thumb, if the deferral length of the annuity, if you are using this to take income, plus your current age equals less than your planned retirement age, this generally isn't going to make much sense. So this little equation I have here, again, is the deferral length. Let's say that that is going to be 10 years. That means that you're going to start taking income from this annuity that you're moving the money into, from a 401k, from an IRA, wherever, and you're going to start taking that income in 10 years. If you are currently 50 years old, that would mean that your retirement age in this case should be 60 years old or before then. If you're planning on retiring at 65, well, it might not make much sense to buy this at age 50. Why? Because your deferral period is only 10 years. Now, if you are comfortable deferring this 15 years, which there are options for that, then this could be a more prudent option. There are some other exceptions to this. For example, you are planning a full retirement at age 65. However, you're going to start taking a little bit more income. So even though you're still working when you are age 60 to 65, maybe you're taking a part-time role from age 60 to 65, or maybe even if you're still full-time, you might use that extra time to go on some extra trips, take some extra vacations, spend time with family, and you're ready to start taking a little bit of additional income to do those things, even though you're not going to fully retire until age 65. So these are some things to consider here. Another thing is if you are just looking to use an annuity like a fixed indexed annuity for growth, then it might be fine to get an annuity earlier. So if you're not just planning to use this for income, but you really just want it because you want to grow your money, but you don't want to deal with losing money in the stock market, and you kind of have that money in an old 401k or an IRA, it might even be fine. Now, not for everyone, but as someone who, let's say, is 40 years old, would roll this money into an annuity because it's sitting in an old 401k. Maybe it's losing money, maybe it's just in a cash account, so it's not really gaining anything, and they want it to gain something, but they just don't want to take risk. That could be a case where, hey, you are going to roll it over. Maybe you put a long deferral period on there to plan to take income later. Maybe you don't do that, you just continue to let it grow. Again, there's some other things that need to be considered here, and this is probably going to be just in rare cases. Second here is that you need liquidity, and then we're going to get here into your goal when you buy an annuity and kind of how that's the overarching theme for every single one of these points. First, liquidity though. This is why annuities can be a part of a plan, but generally aren't going to be someone's entire plan. Almost everyone is going to need some sort of liquidity with their money. If any sort of emergency or opportunity arises, or they want to give a charitable donation, they want that liquidity. No one really likes just having their money completely locked up, not able to access that. There are some little exceptions here with annuities to still make that the case. However, even with those small exceptions that you can access a portion of your cash with certain annuities, and there's also riders to increase that amount, even when that's the case, you still are not having access to a vast majority of this money. Let's say that's 90% of the money that you put in. Well, then it would make a lot of sense to make sure that the annuity is just a portion of the portfolio here, or just a portion of where you're putting cash. So you still have money somewhere else where it is liquid. You can access it. There's plenty of other options to do things like that. If you have money in the stock market and you're wanting to move into a more guaranteed, less risky strategy like an annuity, maybe it's not all of the money that comes out of the market and into the annuity, but just a portion. So sometimes if someone is considering an annuity and then kind of realizes that they're not going to have just as much liquidity as if the money was just in the market, for example, which I would honestly contend a lot of the cases. I think if anyone went to their money manager and tried to pull out a lump sum, about 99 times out of 100, you will probably try to be convinced to keep that money with them. Why? One, for the performance is what they're going to say, but also two is generally how money managers get paid is by keeping the cash. But even if that wasn't the case and you were able to access that money easily, instead of writing the annuity off completely as something that, oh, okay, well, because it's not going to be liquid, I'm not going to do it. Instead, you could then lower the amount that you might have been thinking of putting into an annuity. And that all is going to come down to your goals. So just real quick to touch on the exceptions there. Yeah, generally there are some riders that you can put on to get 7 to 10% access of the money. Generally, let's say you had $1 million and you were able to access 10% of that, so you pulled out 100,000. If the next year you only have 900,000 and the rider is to where you can access 10% of your money like you just did, now it's 10% of the new money. So it's not another 100,000, it would just be 90,000 in this case. Again, a small detail, if you're looking for liquidity or if this is a big deal to you, hopefully you are considering other options as well, because really, when it comes to annuities, liquidity is not one of their strong suits. Now, with all of these things, no matter how much liquidity you need, no matter how old you are, all of these things really come down to what you are looking for in a vehicle and how this plays in with your entire plan. In other words, as we mentioned earlier, what is your goal? So we have a couple things I want to go over here. Are you trying to, and this is the main reason that we see people get annuities, annuity sales are up over 100% in the last 3 years, specifically for the last two reasons we'll show here in a second. But first, opting out of market volatility. If people have money in the market, they understand that over the long haul, they very well may be able to get higher returns than putting it somewhere like an annuity. That's generally not why someone is getting into an annuity, but rather because they don't want to play the game of going up with the market, of going down with the market. They would rather just know that if the market goes down, they're safe, they can sleep at night. The second is going to be guaranteeing your future income. Now, this plays right in with the first one, but if you're wanting to opt out of market volatility, you also are opting out of income volatility, for lack of a better way of putting it. And that is that with a traditional strategy where you have money in a 401k, you have money in an IRA, generally you're going to go by the 4% withdrawal rule, so you're going to pull out 4% of everything you have, then adjusted for inflation, you're going to pull out 4% the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and that's going to continue into perpetuity. Generally, that means it's going to have a high success rate of lasting about 30 years into the future. When you guarantee your income, you aren't worried about how the market performs, judging how much income you can take. In this case, you would be able to roll your money over 1-to-1 into some sort of annuity and have the income there for the rest of your life, guaranteed. No matter if you live 30 years, no matter if you live 50 years, people are living longer than ever nowadays. You know that that money's there. You're not going to run out of money. You're not going to have to go back to work. That's the second reason that people will do annuities. And these are two technical reasons that people will do annuities. The next two, the most important, the main things that people are actually after when they get an annuity, and I'll kind of jumble these two together, that is optimizing for your life and peace of mind. So optimizing for your life as opposed to optimizing for the highest rate of return possible. People understand, number one, that the money is not going to be buried with them in the grave. This money is going to pass on. And while unfortunately a lot of people will fall into the sin of greed or avarice and look for the highest amount that they could possibly get while they're alive, that money for them specifically is in a sense going to die with them. Yes, it is going to get passed on to heirs, and optimizing to leave more behind to them is certainly a great ambition, but at what cost? And that's where the second one comes in with the peace of mind. Annuity sales, as I said, are up over 100% in the last 3 years, and it's solely because of this last reason here. I was talking to a client not that long ago who was with a previous advisor, and he ran into him, and the advisor kind of confronted him and let him know that, hey, happy to see that you're doing well. However, I do think that if you had not done this annuity, for example, you would have been able to get higher returns in the market. My client acknowledged the comment and said that, yes, I actually agree with you. But that's not the point. I'm not here, or I'm not in the vehicle that is an annuity to try and beat the market. I was just here for the contractual guarantees. He lived through the early 2000s, 2008, the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, COVID crash in 2020, and saw what that did to him mentally. That really stressed him out. He was someone who stays up at night late stressing about these things, unfortunately. But since that's the case, he wanted to sacrifice perhaps some rate of return to be able to have a much clearer state of mind and have much more peace, take the guarantees, and not worry about the market. Now, this specific client is someone who would often check the market, who saved diligently his whole life. However, that's not everyone. So if your goal is not this, if you are fine with taking high risk, if you really don't have a hard time at all just leaving money in there and kind of letting it do its thing, and you really just kind of want to take that risk, or perhaps you have enough money and you're only going to be taking such a small percentage of that money in retirement that you're fine taking risk with the other money to try and grow it to leave more behind. Some people, even who have a lot of money, aren't in that position, but those are cases where an annuity might not make sense for you. Again, it's all about what are your goals. Third here, what we're going to go into, and I've kind of touched on this one, so we'll hit it quickly, is if you want high returns. Now, everyone would like high returns if it meant that there was no risk, if there was no increase in risk, but they could get a higher return. Of course, someone is going to take that. But it really does just come down to your risk profile. So again, if you are more in the looking for peace of mind, looking to optimize for your life and kind of remove some stress there, then maybe this is an option that you consider, and you know that you're probably going to sacrifice some returns because of that. If you are just looking for those high returns and you have a higher risk tolerance and you understand that you may be able to lose some of this money, then you might be someone who doesn't really consider an annuity. Now, I did put, it's not impossible to earn high returns, especially in some fixed index annuities. Essentially, that is where your money is going to link to an index. It's not going into an index, it's linking to it, basically meaning that you will reflect the performance of an index up to a cap, or there'll be some sort of multiplier or participation rate on the performance of the index, but there is a 0% floor, which basically means if the index goes up 10%, you would get 10%. But if the index went down 10%, you would get 0. These are, as I mentioned, the fixed indexed annuities, and there are plenty of them that have high earning potential. However, there is different participation rates, there's different terminologies that you would have to be very familiar with before kind of diving into those and thinking that you're just going to earn 10, 15% every single year. It just doesn't really seem to happen like that. So while there are options where this is possible, I just wouldn't rely on it. Lastly here, I put if you already have guaranteed income. Now that means existing pensions, Social Security, and annuities, other things as well. I'll give you a bonus here in a second. But if you have, for example, 50% of your retirement income is already guaranteed, and that's really all the money that you actually need for retirement. Perhaps the additional money is just for traveling, or just for different hobbies, or donating of some sorts, or it's just to leave money behind to kids. If that's the case and you already have enough guaranteed income, well, probably doesn't make that much sense to guarantee the rest, unless you are someone who just wants to have the guarantees there. Totally fine if you want to make an annuity a higher percentage of your income. Now think about it like this. A lot of people will unfortunately have just nothing but Social Security to live off of, and that might not be a great amount, but they do that. So all of their income is coming from an agency that's kind of guaranteeing it. They don't have any money that's in the market, that's going up and down, that has potential for returns. They have all of their money coming from a guaranteed source. That's fine to do at a larger scale as well, even if it is Social Security and a pension and throwing an annuity in there. However, it just, again, depends on your goals. And then lastly, the little bonus tip here, if you already have existing pensions, annuities, whatever it might be, you can check the rate on these for whatever rate you kind of got. Let's say you had $1 million in an annuity and you put it in and you were getting 5%. That means you're getting $50,000 a year guaranteed for the rest of your life, and that's joint on you and your wife. Well, rates with annuity companies do change daily, and while generally you probably are going to be just fine staying in the exact annuity that you're in, also there can be surrender charges if you were considering implementing this little bonus tip, but you can also look at the market again and say, oh wow, maybe interest rates went up, we're in a different market environment. Companies are now offering a 6% withdrawal rate, so if I were to surrender one of these policies and roll it over into a different annuity, a different kind of buy your own pension plan, I might be able to get a higher guaranteed income. Now, again, there's tons of nuances with that. You want to make sure that that's truly in your best interest before just switching from one annuity to another, but keeping an eye on the rates that different annuity companies are offering, especially every couple years, can definitely be a financially sound practice to do. Hopefully this video is helpful. Again, this really all comes down to the peace of mind. That's the reason people are buying annuities. It's the reason annuity sales are up 100% in the past 3 years. It's just peace of mind. If you'd like to take a look at what that could look like for you, click the link there down in the description below. I would be happy to see if I can help out.